I'm gonna sing out my passion and pain, because I know that is why I came. I won't let fear keep me from here. I won't let fear make me disappear. The world may be big and maybe I'll fail. I'll open my wings and open my sails. I've been to the edge and I've jumped off the cliff, and I know it doesn't get better than this. I'm gonna open my voice up wide. I will take all of the dark and the light. I won't let fear keep me from here. I won't let fear make me disappear. I won't let fear make me disappear. I won't let fear make me disappear. Thank you. And don't you let fear make you disappear either, okay?
I love how the music lines up with the message. And I believe that that's a function of alignment. Opinion, and when people are in agreement about opinion, you just have agreement. But when you have agreement of intention, which we have here, then everything lines up around that. Thank you, Mindy. And interestingly enough, your song is perfect for the talk, too. Yay, we like that. Today, self-love, loving oneself. Once we find divine love within, it's important to treat ourselves accordingly. Accordingly. We're going to talk about that a little bit, because I know that sometimes some of us have a hard time treating ourselves well. It comes up in classes and workshops all the time. It comes up in counseling sessions. It continues to show up. So today we're going to address that, and I trust give you some things to think about so you can start making those shifts in your own life. And literally, since today is about self-love, tapping more into that divine love which already exists within, letting it come out in such a way that you love yourself more too. So, Ernest Holmes, there's but one ultimate impulsion in the universe. I shared this last week. This impulsion is love. It is the pure essence of divine givingness. And I talked about giving and love being synonymous. There it is. Love is the greatest healing motivating power in the universe because love is givingness itself. So some people talked to me after the service and said, I knew you were going to go to giving money. And I didn't, did I? I went to something much more difficult, forgiving. When we forgive, we give again, we give forth of ourselves again. It's literally about loving again. Now, how many times have any of us withheld our love because somebody made us upset? Or whatever other term you might want to use on that idea. So, for today, out of this thing called You, which is a great book for people who are new to this teaching, because Dr. Holmes wrote in this book in second person everything. So he's talking to you, the reader. And so he doesn't talk about, this is what is or whatever, and doesn't talk about those big abstractions. He talks to you, the reader, which us, the readers, are much exposed to you statements about us prior. This gives us a different way of hearing, a different point of view about who we are and what we are, etc. So, you are made perfect. Period. You are made perfect when you enter into conscious communion with love. So even if you slipped out of what you might think of as perfect, and perfect does not mean ideal. It means complete, as is, no thing missing. That's what perfect means. In alignment with original nature. You are made perfect when you enter into conscious communion with love. So if you, quote, slip, based on your perception of what slippage looks like, then by coming back into communion with that love that we talked about last week, that inner love, then, which is really about givingness, then all of a sudden you slip back into the wholeness, which is the nature of who we are. Love is the fulfillment because love harmonizes everything. Love flows through everything. You can never make the most perfect use of your life unless that use is motivated by love. Now, it's my opinion, based on the music I just heard Mindy sing, is that Mindy has decided somewhere in her past that she's going to love herself. And by loving herself, she lets her out. And when she lets her out, we get touched, don't we? My personal opinion is that as we, each of us, let us, our true self out, who we really are and who we came here to be, when we let that out, all the number of the people in this room, that demonstrates all the numbers of God that now shows up present. And it changes things around us. It changes the world to the degree that we do that. So, how do you and how don't you love yourself? That's the question of the day. What do you do on a daily basis that proves your love for you? I want you to think about that. So do you or don't you take time for yourself? Do you or don't you stretch or move or walk or exercise? Do you or don't you eat well? And that eat well is based on you and your life and your metabolism and all that kind of stuff. I decided to go vegetarian 1 full year, and I starved to death. Starved to death. Now, truth be known, I was marathoning at the time. I didn't really understand the possible way of doing vegetarianism in such a way that supported my body based on what it was having to do. And subsequently, I caught every cold that came along, every flu that came along. I was a mess. I weighed 145 pounds, ended up going to the health food store to get some herbs to help me get back on course again, and I walked by the meat case. And I looked at a piece of rare beef there in the case and started salivating all over myself. It was a mess. I bought a filet. I went home. I grilled it rare like I like it. I cut a piece of that filet off. I put it in my mouth. I chewed and chewed and chewed and chewed and chewed and chewed and got all the juices out of it and spat out the solid. Because I didn't know what was going to happen if I didn't. For 2 days, I coasted on the energy and felt better than I had felt in almost a year. For my body, I seem to need complex protein. His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, he has to eat chicken now and again. His doctors told him that. Can you imagine how that is for a guy who is a devout peace guy? Doesn't kill anything? I'm sure he prays for the karma of the people who do prepare his chicken. And he takes care of his body because that is important in him doing his work. He takes care of himself. How many of you practice your spiritual practices? I mean, regularly. Do you meditate? Do you do affirmations? Do you do spiritual mind treatment if you know how to do that? Do you do visioning if you know how to do that? What do you use as a spiritual practice, and does it support and sustain you? Does it help you look at you in a brighter light when you do them? One of the guidelines for your meditation technique is, if it works for you, is you feel better after having done it. Boy, that's complicated, isn't it? And so start doing something that helps you feel better about you and helps enlarge your perspective. How do you or don't you expose yourself to beauty? or nature. See, nature nurtures, and sitting there, for instance, for some people, sitting in a museum and looking at an amazing painting or sculpture. I went to San Francisco to the De Young Museum, and in the lobby was Rodin's Balthus standing there. It's a dramatic, huge statue. I walked slowly around that statue for almost an hour. I was so captivated with it. That's getting lost in beauty. Or spending time sitting at the side of a riverbank and letting the Provo River run by up in the Uintas. It nurtures us to do that. How many of you have listened to your inner wisdom more and more and more? Not the monkey mind, the inner wisdom. And how many of you have done something new or challenging every day? So we're playing Spider, and my son's watching us play Spider, and he's been playing Spider, and he does the medium level, and I did the medium level. And I made some wise crack and said, try a hard one and see how that is. So he went straight to it. He tried the hard one. He said, wow. Now my mistake was, I said, try a hard one. It'll expand your mind. So he did this. He completed it in no time. He said, try a hard one. It'll expand your mind. So swipe it clean, get it off my iPad. I don't want to do that nonsense anymore. I didn't let myself stay in the challenge because that challenge grows us. That's one of the ways of loving us, is to take a class in something that you've never taken a class in. Do something you haven't done before. Experience something new. Or, how do you or don't you accept yourself as you is? That is one of the single most important pieces of taking care of yourself, of loving yourself, and that's accepting yourself as you is. So a little story on myself. In 1984, I entered practitioner training and ministerial training simultaneously, and I'm working in middle management and high tech. So I'm putting in 48, 60 hours a week at work. I go to class for practitioner training, and we have all this reading and writing we have to do for practitioner training. And I'm in ministerial school where we have to read usually 3 to 5, more likely 5 books a week, mind map them so that we proved that we did in fact read them and understand them. And I started doing that the 1st of September of this particular year. Well, it was about mid-November, I was a dozen books behind in my ministerial reading. And I'm kind of a performance freak, and so I'm feeling pretty badly about myself. Take that one piece of data, and I'm every night from 8 o'clock till midnight, I am studying. So, and reading and writing and all this other kind of stuff. So Christmas time is coming around, and I decided to give my twins, who had just turned 7, an opportunity to experience free enterprise and the free enterprise system and capitalism. And so we went out, and together we climbed up oak trees, and we cut down mistletoe out in Sonoma County, California. And it's a gorgeous day. I'm wearing shorts and a t-shirt. The boys are out there doing the same thing. I did the tree climbing, just make sure. And they took that home, and they cut them in sprigs, put them in Ziploc bags or some kind of baggie, put green and red ribbons around them, and then I walked with them door to door in our neighborhood, and they sold mistletoe for 25 or 50 cents a bag. Now, it was a great experience for them. They got rejected. They got to experience all kinds of different people who didn't want to talk to them, didn't want to see them. And I was on the sidewalk watching the whole interaction, and we would debrief after each one. So it was a great learning opportunity for them and for me in that observing process. Well, we did that for about a week, and all of a sudden, they earned $20 in that week each and I got poison oak. I had it all over the inside of my legs where I'd shinnied up these oak trees. I had it on the back of my arm, all the way down to my knuckles, and in other places too. Because I didn't realize I'd been exposed to it, because in the December time frame in Sonoma County, all the leaves fall off the poison oak, all the oil recedes into the stem, and so it's twice as strong, at least. So I'm covered with this stuff. I'm still working 48, 60 hours a week. Tried everything. Nothing healed the poison oak. It just got worse, and it blistered, and it seeped, and it oozed, and I'm wearing shorts, hiking socks, and boots to work with a couple of sweaters on because I'm freezing and it's cold. And one day I'm sitting at my desk, and I smelled a fragrance. Now, I don't know if you know, but all infections, all bacterial infections have a certain scent. And I smelled this scent that was familiar. It reminded me of when I was in Vietnam as a hospital corpsman, and that it has a sweet, putrid kind of a fragrance to it. And I looked down at my arm, and behind my hand was swollen, and there were these red marks going up my arm. And that's what I said. Ooh. So I went to my boss, and like a good metaphysician, I said, I think I need to go home and take care of this. And he said, I think you need to go to the doctor. I said, thank you. Okay. I didn't go to the doctor. I went home and started doing my homework. Because I'm a metaphysician, right? I know how to heal myself. That particular night, I am reading Dr. Joseph Murphy's book, Prayer is the Answer, which covers the 7 sacraments of the Catholic Church. One of those sacraments is confession. And as I'm reading that chapter, he starts it off by saying, bitterness held against oneself causes psychic pus. And I went, ooh, that's good. So I let that sink in. I cleaned everything off my desk. I had a huge blank blotter pad that I'd take notes on. Got a magic marker, and I went, you're going to love this. I wrote this affirmation. I now forgive and release myself for anything I've done against my true nature. I also forgive and release anyone who has injured or who I think has injured or harmed me in any way. I just scrawled it out. And I read it, and I read it, and I read it, and I read it. And I felt like I'd gotten it. So I put my books back up there, continued my homework, put them down at midnight, went to bed, woke up at 5 o'clock the next morning to get ready for my day. And I went to the bathroom, and I looked in the mirror, and I noticed that my arm felt different. And I looked down, the swelling was gone, the red streaks were gone, all I had was scabs. That's it. And I looked myself in the eye and said, wow, that was quick. Now, I don't know if you have ever had that kind of what some would call a miraculous experience. Poison oak typically cleans up in 10 days. I am 3 weeks into the process, and nothing was working. And by that, I've forgiven and released anyone who I think has injured or harmed me in any way, but more importantly, the first one, I now forgive and release myself for anything I have done against my true nature. I came back into alignment with that love that heals everything, the givingness that heals everything. I stopped feeling crappy about myself and just added 2 books a night and got caught up within 2 weeks. I was back on track again. And that was a huge awakening. My first year in the ministry, it turned into a talk called Psychic Penicillin. Because that was the key for me to awaken to getting back on track about loving myself, taking care of myself, doing what I needed to do to feel good about myself, which is the key to self-love. How many of you have criticized yourself for doing something that you thought you should not have done? Think about that. And how many of you are over that? Not in some sort of a denial way, but really looked inside and said, I did that. I did that. I mean, you have to lie to say you didn't do it. So that doesn't make any sense, does it? But by acknowledging that we did it, we stand a chance of being aware of that and not continuing to do it, or stopping ourselves in the midst of doing it again, whatever that may happen to be. We all have that stuff. We all have those kinds of conclusions. The question is, what will you do about it now? I've never believed that the whipping stick and the mea culpa has helped. Never. And when we turn a mistake into I'm a mistake, man, it's a whole lot harder road to hoe to come back into self-love and giving of the life force to ourselves, acknowledging the life force within us and letting that out anew. Jean Ennui, I shared last week. Our entire life consists ultimately in accepting ourselves as we are. What if you simply decided this week to accept yourself as you are? Everything you've done, everything you have not done, every lie you've told, every person you have hurt, and more importantly, how you have denied yourself your good in your particular life. I want to close with one of my favorite quotes from the Buddha. You yourself deserve your love as much as anybody else. And frankly, if you love yourself, you'll have more love available for those around you. It will change your relationships when you start taking care of you. It will liberate you into the more greater yet to be, or however you want to talk about that you envision or would like to envision as your life. You deserve your love as much as anybody else. Bless you. Let's pray together. So I simply settle down into this space, this very moment. This very moment. And I breathe easily. I recognize that breath comes from the divine. That breath comes from wholeness. That breath comes from God, from the originating spirit. And I know it lives in me, it lives in everyone. So I let my awareness of that build. I let my body feel it, that sense of connection and belonging. And I bring to mind whatever I particularly desire. And I put attention on that right now. So as these individual truth tellings continue, I speak my word for everyone. And I know about each a reconnection with, a new awareness, a deeper awareness about that love that already lives within. I breathe upon it, and I notice that ember turns into a flame. That flame literally from the inside out consumes every cell of the body, healing them. Each one goes back to its original perfection. It also burns within the mind, so all those thoughts, conclusions, decisions, opinions from the past, all the beliefs that self-limit, simply dissolve. And a newfound joy comes from an expanded experience of life, the expanded potential and possibilities in life. Each steps more easily into this expanded life. And each shares that with everyone around them, easily, effortlessly, joyously. So for this time, the law that brings these words into experience and expression, for the joy of the love that already lives within, and for the good that comes out of it, I simply begin to celebrate. I let it be. And so it is.
I am so blessed.